Hi, my name is Jeannie Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have attorney Robert Steinbuch joining us. As many of you know, he is a professor of law at the Bowen School of Law there in Little Rock, but he is here representing his own beliefs and ideas. Hi there.
Hey, it's great to be with you again, Ginny. It's been some time. It's great to see you and all the Conduit folks.
Hey, I know we've missed having you on. We'll have to do this more regularly moving forward. I wanted to pick your brain about a few things. First, we're kind of in the lull now that session is over and we're looking back, reflecting on everything that's happened. I want to get your overall impression of what you thought of this general session.
Well, I think it's like any session, right? There's the good and the bad, and maybe on occasion the ugly.
Yeah.
And of course, I can't even comment across the board on all the bills that were introduced. It's just too many, right?
Yeah.
Meaning I don't know all of them. I know some of them. But let's talk about some of the ones that are interesting. What did pass, what didn't pass. I think actually the most important bill was one that didn't pass, and it's really disturbing. And that was SB 70. Say again?
Yeah, talk to us about that one.
Yeah, that was SB 71. That was the bill to put an end to set-asides, quotas, and preferences, also known as affirmative action, also known as diversity, inclusion, and equity, aka DIE. And this bill, sponsored by Senator Dan Sullivan, Representative Justin Gonzalez, would have done exactly that. By the way, we Arkansas would have not been the first or the second, or as those late night TV commercials say, not the fourth, wait for it, not the fifth. We would have been the 10th state to have done this. So while it still puts us near the front, and that's an admirable thing, it shows our conservative gravitas, or would have shown our conservative gravitas. We failed to pass that bill. And now let's follow the steps like breadcrumbs to see where that failure was. The Senate committee passed it, no problem. The Senate body passed it, no problem. The House committee passed it, no problem. And it failed on the House floor. So you might think, and I know you don't, but one might think, well, the Democrats got the best of us. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Yes, every Democrat voted against the bill. I don't blame a mosquito for stinging me, and I don't blame Democrats for voting against good bills that have conservative values. That's what they do, Democrats. But the Republicans in the House failed us. Not everyone, but a huge number. And I've named names already. I put out a column a few weeks back, maybe a few months back at this point, listing all of those that voted for the bill. And I will, as we go forward, list all the people that voted against the bill. People who claim to be conservatives. Oh, I didn't understand it. Oh, so you didn't do your job. Oh, there was some controversy. So you didn't do your job. Oh, I heard this claim that was false, and I know that you said it was false, and Dan Sullivan said it was false, and Justice Gonzalez said it was false, but some Democrat told me that this was true. Oh, so you didn't do your job. These are examples of Republicans failing to do their job. And what we do when we have Republicans failing to do their job is we find better Republicans to do their job. I am not wedded to any political candidate because he has an R in front of his name. Mind you, some of those R's are scratched out D's, right? We know that. We know that. There are several Republicans in the House, including in leadership, who were originally elected as Democrats. Now, it's possible for a Democrat to see the light and become a Republican, but it's equally as possible, and indeed we know it's the case, that some Democrats, the only light they saw was, I can't get elected unless I put an R in front of my name.
Yeah. Why do you think that bill had such a hard time there on the House floor? What misinformation? I know that you and I probably both heard a lot of things about that bill, that it does this or that, or it, cuts out, help for veterans. There was the rumor mill was in full force on that bill. Talk to us about what you think was really the root cause of why it failed.
Leadership in the House was against it, and they poisoned the well.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's one area to blame, but it's not the only. Those to whom they poisoned the well should have done their own job. They should have done their own investigation, and they should have had their own backbone and made a decision irrespective of what those pulling the leash had to say to them. Yeah. But if you voted against this bill, you did it based on ignorance, misinformation, or following the lead of someone who's not a true conservative. Any one of those three is sufficient to question your ability to hold that office. And if it's any combination of it, it certainly guarantees it.
Well, elections will be here before we know it. Let's also talk about bad bills. You and I saw you there at the Capitol numerous times. You were there to speak against the FOIA bill. Representative David Ray was one of the sponsors of that. Talk to us about that bill.
Yeah, that bill was a train wreck. And by the way, I like David Ray, and I'll say this even more. He's sponsored some very good technical bills. Yeah. You know, the bill about when you can have these off-cycle elections, basically to raise our taxes inevitably, and he's severely limited it. That's a good bill. And when David does things like that, he finds these problems in the law, these technical issues that are often glossed over and taken advantage of by small groups. He does a very good job of isolating those problems, pursuing those problems, and fixing those problems. But this FOIA bill was a hodgepodge. It was a grab bag for every government entity that wanted to reduce its oversight. Yeah. They come in and say, please, legislature, make it so that we have to do less work. Please, legislature, make it so that the citizens have less oversight over us. And even more so, or more interesting perhaps, the bill was introduced on a Monday. We held our FOIA task force meeting on a Tuesday. David couldn't make it. And then the bill was run in committee on a Wednesday. It's like that old poem, Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday, christened on a Tuesday, married on a Wednesday, fell ill on a Thursday, got worse on a Friday, died on Saturday, buried on Sunday. That's the life of Solomon Grundy. Well, that's the life of this, right? That's the life of this bill. Born on a Monday, missed the FOIA task force meeting on a Tuesday, died in committee on a Wednesday. By the way, about that FOIA task force, a government entity, and I'm on it, we voted that this bill was not in the best interests of the state of Arkansas. We never said that. We voted down bills before, but we never said that before. That's how bad of a bill this was.
You know, it was interesting during that testimony in committee, after everything was done, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was it Womack? No, not Womack, not Womack.
He's a fantastic state legislator.
He said, I think it was him, correct me though. He said, you know, after hearing all of this, he said the only people, and I'm paraphrasing, the only people that came to speak in support of this bill have a special interest, or in a lack of transparency, whether it be government agencies, that sort of thing. And he said you don't hear anyone as far as just your average citizen coming and supporting this bill. And so I thought that was really insightful on his part.
He was very insightful, as he often is. That is Representative Womack. He said exactly that. Wait. The only people that are saying there's a problem here are the people that have to respond to FOIA requests. Look, I'm not saying that there's never the case that someone makes a FOIA request and it's really kind of meandering and it creates a lot of work that the government entity doesn't want to have to do. By the way, it's still their legal responsibility, but nonetheless. So I'm not saying that never happens. But what I am saying is that FOIA requests are made by the press. They're made by me. Now I actually, as you know, have a column in the Democrat Gazette. So I am press as well as public citizen, and they're made by public citizens. And people contact me virtually every week with questions on how to make FOIA requests. And I can
Yeah.
guarantee you, those folks are not making requests that shouldn't be fulfilled. They are made in a cogent and fair fashion. And so,
well, yeah,
right.
and then let's move on to something else. But Joey McCutcheon, big fan of him. He was there along with, there was a city employee, I believe, from Huntsville, and she testified as well. I think she was a city clerk. And she said, had it not been for this FOIA law, we would not have uncovered the sexual abuse that was happening in that public school system. And, you know, when you think about what the press and citizens are able to uncover because of our wonderful FOIA law, you just hate to see that taken away. Okay, let's talk about something good. Tell us something that you really appreciated that was passed or you thought was a good bill.
I'll tell you two good bills.
Okay.
Alan Clark had a fantastic FOIA bill that did a few things. Perhaps the most important part of that bill, and Joey McCutcheon worked on that bill as well, by the way. Perhaps the most important part of that bill was the section that says, now, when the government responds to a FOIA request and refuses to turn over certain records pursuant to an exemption, they must specifically state what exemption they are employing in that instance. Federally, that's already done, and in the state, it wasn't done. And that's an important improvement. It also requires that the person acknowledge the receipt of the FOIA request, and if it's the wrong person, to direct you to the right person. So these are all basic common sense provisions, but they had never been in the law until now. That's a fantastic bill. And of course, Alan Clark has been a FOIA advocate from the get-go, amongst others, and it deserves a great kudos. There's another bill that became law that's very interesting, and I thought was a good bill, a very good bill, but I thought a small bill. Moment why it's not. And that was a bill by Dan Sullivan, then SB 81, now Act 372. And so this bill did a few things. It said the existing law on obscenity had this odd exception that said, hey, you know, people can be arrested for obscenity, whatever the law is, and it's been so for decades. But if you're doing your job as a librarian, as a teacher, then and engage in obscenity, you get a get out of jail free card for some reason. So that exemption was removed. I can't understand why that exemption was ever there. It put into place, secondly, a process by which people who object to the placement of books, typically right in children's and young adult sections, that they could go and make an objection. That policy already exists in libraries. And it formalized a process by which you can go to the city or the county to have that reviewed. Now, mind you, cities and counties are always in charge of their libraries. So that means that the city governing body or the quorum court in the county could always make a provision that said, do this to the library, and the library has to comply because the library is made up of employees of the city, and those are the governing bodies of the city, of the city or the county. All this law did was make a formal process on how you make that appeal. And faces are melting amongst the Hillcrest glitterati as we speak.
That's a segment.
Right, thank you. And then finally, the law, well, a couple of things. It allows now parents to see the books children are taking out. That was a request, by the way, made by the librarians. They said, well, we're not allowed to show that, but we want to show that. And Dan Sullivan put that in his bill. And there was another, and it created, of course, this crime of distributing to minors harmful material. The definition of harmful to minor material is already in the law, but there was no prohibition on the distribution, and so this law puts that into place. And that's a good bill.